Zimbabwe collapsed for many reasons, but one of them is they started doing what the U.S. is doing today. They're printing money to pay their bills. So it's a very important time. So I wanted to invite Philip Haslam. He's our first guest. When money destroys nations. Because it's important we understand what happened in Zimbabwe. You know, Zimbabwe is kind of a laughing stock right now because the Zimbabwe dollar is worth more today than it was when they were printing it. It's used today as a tourist item. It's a souvenir. It's a joke. It's no different than what Hitler did not Hitler, but the Weimar Republic did in Germany in 1920. And America is doing today. It's no different than what they did in Venezuela or Venezuela or Argentina. We're doing the same thing. So that's why my book is called Capitalist Manifesto. It's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's because we have no financial education in schools, and most people have no idea what's happening right now. The United States is going socialist, Marxist, possibly communist. That's what frightens me. And I know I can probably get deplatformed for this, but so be it. So with that, I want to invite my friend here, Philip Haslam, When Money Destroys Nations. Welcome to the program, Philip.
Good afternoon, Robert, and good afternoon to your viewers.
Right. And so where are you right now?
I'm in Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm 9 hours behind you.
But so would you tell us a little bit your background and what caused you to write the book, When Money Destroys Nations?
Wonderful. Thanks, Robert. So this is the book, When Money Destroys Nations. And I've been passionate for the last 25 years, since I was at university, about the issue of money printing. And I studied economics and finance at the University of Cape Town. I was very concerned at the time. They were advocating in our lectures that money printing was a very good thing.
At university, they were saying it was a good thing.
Yes. In fact, you can't go to a university around the world where they don't, where the majority of your economics is focused around debt and money printing. But I was exposed to the Austrian school at that stage, and I started to engage with the issue of money printing and developed a course and was going around teaching people about money printing. This was just before 2008 financial crisis, and then during the 2008 financial crisis, and during one of those talks. My current co-author Russell Lamberti said to us in the talk he was presenting with me, he said, we've got an example of what happens when a country prints money on a large scale right next door to us. And I'm telling you that there are stories there that people haven't heard. I thought that was very fascinating, and I went to interview a bunch of my Zimbabwean friends. And the country Zimbabwe had collapsed in hyperinflation, and their stories fascinated me. And I lay awake at night thinking, this is crazy. It's crazy that ordinary people lived through this, and I've actually never heard their story. I ended up traveling to Zimbabwe and traveling around the various cities and interviewing people, just asking them, tell me about what happened in the hyperinflation. How did money printing affect you personally? And many of the people started saying, I actually can't really remember it. I kind of blocked it out. It was, it was quite bad. But then I'd ask them stories like, what happened when the stores emptied? What happened when you couldn't get any fuel, or when the water pumps dried up? How did you respond? And then their stories came, and they spoke from their heart. I typically, would meet with someone for 2 hours, and I'd just be scribbling and just taking notes, just to hear, how did it affect people personally? I interviewed people from all walks of life, teachers, business owners, housewives, farmers, just across the spectrum, taxi drivers, and just heard their stories. That initially was just a special interest a trip for me, and that turned into a whole lot of material that ultimately led to myself and my co-author Russell Lamberti writing the book When Money Destroys Nations.
Well, what's interesting is that South Africa is right next to Zimbabwe. I mean, you could technically walk to it, if you had to. But South Africa had no idea what was going on. I knew.
We knew that there was, there were some reports about this, famine in Zimbabwe, and we had a lot of people coming across the borders. We knew that there was hyperinflation. What we didn't know was how ordinary people responded. What actually happened in the social communities, how money printing affected the very fabric of the Zimbabwe society. We couldn't pick it up, and certainly we'd heard stories and there were things in the newspaper. I mean, it would be the same equivalent to say, for instance, Venezuela. Most people haven't got a clue what's actually happening in Venezuela in an understanding of how a person is actually being affected by money printing in the country right now. But they probably heard many stories. Oh yes, Venezuela is going through hyperinflation at the moment. That's typically the difference.
Would you mind telling some of the stories of what happened to ordinary people when their money turned into the Zim dollar? It's a joke, right? It's a joke.
Yes.
It's a tourist thing now. You buy Zim dollars.
It's a joke, but for many people it was a raw reality. I interviewed one lady, and she said that at university they studied the German hyperinflation in the 1920s, and she thought, "Geez, what a bizarre scenario." You got these people, sweeping up notes on the street, taking wheelbarrows full of money to go and pay. And she could even recall when I was speaking to her, she could even recall the thinking, wow, how could people live like that? What a interesting scenario. But she then said to me, I had no idea that in a few short years, I would be living through the same thing. You see, the thing is, it's really easy to describe it. It's almost sort of comical in nature when you hear about it, except that it happens quite quickly and it happens quite predictably. I mean, just to comment, few people know that there have been 56 incidences of hyperinflation in the last 100 years. It happens, it's a regular event. It happens when a country begins printing money on a large scale. So how did it actually affect ordinary Zimbabweans? Well, the economic reality is that money printing caused prices to rise. And, that was very subtle initially, but as it began to cause prices to rise substantially, it made people poorer. You could buy less and less and less. Ultimately, what happened was it put pressure on producers, people who produced things, manufacturers, the retail industry, put pressure on them, and ultimately it shut down the entire manufacturing and agricultural, retail, wholesaling markets, and so people couldn't get any food in the stores. The only way that they could get food was to barter, and to actually bring real value, and then barter behind the clubhouse, as it were. I mean, many stories about clubhouses, taxi ranks, and these types of places becoming meeting places where people would meet and would barter for goods that they needed in day-to-day life. So I mean, the very typical thing is you put pressure on your supply chains. Money printing effectively wipes out your supply chains.
Because nobody will sell to you, because the Zim dollar is worth nothing. Nobody will sell you anything, so that the supermarkets go empty. They can't bring food in.
Yeah. So what happens is you sell something and you get paid, and it takes a while for you to restock your stores. And the time that you need to pay for those goods, the prices have risen, and your effective margins have decreased. And then you sell and the prices have gone up, but then you need to restock your stores and the prices have increased. And a time comes when that inflation cycle starts to, beat you at the kind of supply game. and you actually become unprofitable. Your margins become unprofitable. You can't raise your prices fast enough to compensate for the cost of your inputs. It's a very subtle thing, and it's very difficult to actually pin it down. But you get a sudden moment when all the stores begin to go empty, and businesses begin to shut down, and then it begins to put unique pressures on people. Well, how do you actually get supply? Most people, even in Zimbabwe in those days, most people got their food and goods and services from stores. And so it just fundamentally changed the way that people interacted in a business sense. And it became about barter. And it became about, people spend a lot of time trying to kind of understand, how do I price goods so that, like, when I restock the stores, I can remain profitable again. So that dynamic affected all of the economy. So the fuel stations, water and fuel reserves, government services got completely wiped out. You can imagine that when you're trying to pay taxes, or when the government's collecting taxes, and you typically pay taxes at the end of the year, but by that stage, all the tax revenue has been eroded. So this is a bizarre thing, that the money printing that funds the government ends up actually eroding the tax base of the government, and the government gets poorer and poorer in its ability to deliver on services.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information, and it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. The fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much, much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.